If you gave me a genuinely committed 6 months, the kind that most people would not be willing to give, I could show you a version of yourself you would barely recognize from where you're standing right now. Not a self-help fantasy, not a motivational line, a specific, honest, achievable transformation. And I know it's possible because I've done it, and because I've since watched other founders do it too. This video is going to walk you through the 5 principles that actually make that transformation happen, not the 20 things people talk about, the 5 that do most of the work. If you take them seriously and give them the time they need, the version of you sitting 6 months from now is going to look back at the version of you watching this and barely be able to believe you were the same person. So let's get into it. Welcome to the Lead Well channel, where we explore the inner world of leadership, well-being, and what it means to build a business and a life that doesn't break you. My name's Trevor, and I built a business, lost myself completely inside of it, and then spent 2 years quietly rebuilding the version of me that had almost disappeared. This channel exists because of what I learned during that rebuild, and this video is about how any founder can start their own version of it if they're willing to commit 6 months to the process. The advice here is aimed at founders, but it applies to anyone who has looked in the mirror recently and wondered when they became something that they don't recognize. If that's you or you're heading in that direction, this video is going to give you a way out. Let me anchor this in something real before we go anywhere else. 2 years ago, I looked at myself and I couldn't find the person that I used to be. I was anxious most of the time, short-tempered in a way that was unfair to everyone around me, especially to my wife. I wasn't sleeping properly, I was self-medicating to try and switch my brain off, and I had a quiet, unshakable conviction that the universe had turned against me. The version of me that had built the business I was still technically running was gone. I couldn't remember him in theory, I couldn't feel him, and when I tried to reach back to who I used to be, all I found was distance. The version of me that is standing here now making this video is a very different person, not because time passed, not because things magically got easier, because I made a series of small, boring, deliberate changes over roughly about 6 months that compounded into something significantly bigger than any of them looked in isolation. I want to give you those changes today because what I did is not unique to me, and the mechanism that made it work is not complicated. It's just something most people never actually give themselves a chance to test. Before we get into the 5 principles, I need to spend 2 minutes on why any of this works, because if you don't buy the underlying mechanism, none of the specific advice will land. The mechanism is compound. Small, consistent changes, repeated daily, produce results that are almost always more transformative than dramatic, all-at-once, high-energy interventions. James Clear in Atomic Habits described it in terms of 1% per day. If you improve just 1% a day, you're 37 times better in a year. The math works whether you believe it or not. Alex Hormozi has his own version of the same idea. Most people, he says, massively overestimate what they can do in a week and massively underestimate what they can do in a year. And the reason for that is the same reason we underestimate compound interest until we see it play out. The line doesn't look impressive at 3 months. It looks unbelievable at 12. Now here's the specific version of this that matters for founders, because I know some of you are watching this and thinking that the compound principle sounds great in theory, but you don't have the time or the bandwidth to add anything else to a week that is already full to bursting. Most founders can't sustain a dramatic intervention. Their week is already at capacity. What they can sustain is a small change repeated daily that doesn't cost them anything that they can't already afford to spend. And it's those small changes compounded over 6 months that produce the founder they currently can't imagine becoming. The principle isn't new. What might be new is applying it to a founder whose life is already at capacity, which is exactly the position most of you are in right now. So the next 5 sections are going to give you the exact levers that make the compound principle work for someone in your position. The first and most important principle, the Keystone habit. This is the idea from Charles Duhigg's The Power of Habit that a single change, once it holds, tends to trigger a cascade of other positive changes. One habit that pulls the others behind it. Get this one in place and everything else becomes easier by default. For most founders, and it was absolutely true for me, this keystone is the morning. Not because morning routines are a fetish of the productivity industry, they're not. The reason the morning matters so much is more practical than that. The morning is the one time of the day the business hasn't yet reached its hand into. If you protect it, you own the first section of every day. You reset the tone. You start from a position of decision rather than reaction. And the momentum that you generate in the first hour tends to carry into the rest of the day, whether you want it or not. My version of this is deliberately unglamorous. No phone until the ritual's done, some breath work, time with the dog, a proper cup of tea, that's it. It sounds absurdly simple, and it is absurdly simple. That's the point. Simple, sustainable, repeatable, every day without fail. And here's what I've learned about the morning that took me a while to understand. It's not really about what you do during that time. It's about the statement it makes to yourself every single morning that you're in control of how your day begins rather than letting it begin on everyone else's terms. That statement, made daily for 6 months, is more powerful almost than anything else that you could do. Pick your morning, protect it, compound it. It becomes the keystone that every other change gets built on top of. Most personal development advice is about addition. Add this, try this, read this, do more of this. The most transformative changes I've ever made and the ones I see most consistently working for founders that I work with are almost always subtractions. For me, alcohol was the subtraction that mattered most. I've talked about that in depth in another video, so I won't repeat myself here, but the principle applies to whatever is quietly costing you the most. It might be alcohol, it might be scrolling for an hour before bed, it might be a group chat that consumes your emotional bandwidth without giving anything back. It might be a supplier relationship that you dread every single week. It might be a piece of the operational load that you've been absorbing that should have been handed off to someone else years ago. The point is not to identify 5 things and remove all of them at once. That's the mistake most people make, and it's why they end up doing nothing. The point is to identify the single point that is most consistently draining you and remove or reduce that one thing. Most founders resist the subtraction because it feels like a loss. What they don't yet know, and what they'll only know once they've tried it, is that removing the depleting thing frees up more capacity than any other addition could ever produce, because the depleting thing was already taking capacity that you didn't realize you were spending. Removing it doesn't give you a hole to fill, it gives you back energy you can now direct wherever you choose. Find that one thing, take it out. 6 months later, you would not believe how much lighter that you feel. Newport wrote a book called Deep Work several years ago. The core idea is that in a world of constant distraction, the ability to focus on hard, meaningful work for an extended period is a rare and valuable skill. Anyone who can do it will pull away from anyone who can't. The argument was aimed primarily at knowledge workers with quiet offices. It applies even more urgently to founders in an industry where distraction is the actual product, where interruption is the working environment, where being reachable is treated as a virtue, and where nobody has taught you how to protect the kind of focused attention that produces the strategic work that only you can do. Here's the specific version for you. 1 or 2 hours a week of protected, uninterrupted, deep work on the thing that only you can do. The training framework you keep promising yourself that you'll build. The strategic decisions about the next 12 months. The financial review you keep pushing off to next week. Whatever the biggest thing on your plate is that requires actual thought rather than reaction. Blocked out, phone off, door closed, everyone told in advance that during this block you're not available for anything less than a genuine emergency. 2 hours a week for 6 months is 50 hours of deep, high-value work you would not otherwise have done. That's the difference between a business that develops over the period and a business that just survives. You know where that time needs to come from because you already know where your week is currently going. If you don't, do the energy leak tracker for a week and it will show you clearly. There's a link up the top now for a video that I've done specifically on this, so check it out. Quick thing before we carry on, I have a free 1-hour webinar coming up where we look at the gap between why you opened your venue in the first place and how you actually spend your weeks. You'll leave with one thing to change and a way to change it. It's a great way to work out a simple little win, and it's completely free. Link to sign up is in the show notes, so check it out, and I'd love to see you join in. Now let's get back to the video. Check it out. This next principle is not something you'll find in most productivity books, but I would argue it's one of the most transformative things I've done with my own recovery that I want to share it with you honestly. Give your inner critic a name. The voice that catastrophizes, the one that tells you that you're failing, the one that runs worst case scenarios on a loop when you're trying to get to sleep. The one that comes in when you're trying to do something good for yourself and tells you that you shouldn't. That voice is doing something to you the moment it becomes separate from you. And the way you separate it is by giving it a name. I named mine Frank. I know that sounds ridiculous. I'm a big Punisher fan from the Marvel comics. That's part of why it works, because the moment I could say out loud, "Not now, Frank, it's time to rest," or "Not now, Frank, that's not conducive to the day," I could put distance between the voice and me. I wasn't fighting my own thoughts anymore. I was declining to follow the thoughts of a character called Frank. Try it. I know it feels absurd the first time. Do it anyway. And the compound effect of it over 6 months is significant, because every time that you don't act on the voice, you weaken its grip on you. 6 months in and it's still there, it's just quieter and it has significantly less authority than it used to. A founder whose inner critic has less authority makes different decisions, takes different risks, sleeps better, shows up as a fundamentally different person. That is the transformation. The final principle, and the one that most people underestimate: you can't become unrecognizable in isolation. Or you can, but it takes twice as long and the failure rate is significantly higher. The people around you determine the pace of your change. If everyone in your orbit is stuck where you are, or worse, if they subtly resist you becoming someone different because it disrupts the equilibrium they're comfortable in, then every step that you take will meet friction. Not always deliberate friction, but the slow gravity of a group that doesn't share your direction. Find or build a community of people that are trying to do the same work. Founders who understand what you're carrying. People who don't roll their eyes when you talk about non-negotiables or morning routines or naming your inner critic Frank. People who are actively trying to become unrecognizable themselves and will notice and reinforce your progress as you make it. This is one of the reasons I built the Lead Well community, because the work of transformation goes much faster when you're doing it alongside people who understand exactly what it costs and exactly what it's worth. If you don't have that in your life, find it. Build it if you have to. It multiplies everything else in this video. Before I wrap up, I want to tell you what exactly happens over the 6 months, because I don't want you to walk into this with a straight line in your head that doesn't match the reality. Month one's the hardest. You make the changes, you break the changes, you start again. You feel stupid for how hard something as simple as protecting a morning turns out to be. The wins are small, they're hard to see. Most people quit somewhere in the second or third week because the payoff hasn't yet arrived and the effort feels disproportionate. Push through this. What you're feeling is completely normal. Months 2 through 4 are the plateau. The changes start to hold most of the time. You still slip. You still resist your own progress in subtle ways, but the shape of your week has begun to change and small differences in how you feel begin to appear. You notice one morning that you slept properly for the first time in months. You notice one afternoon that you didn't reach for your phone during the ritual. These are small victories and they don't feel like much in the moment, but they are compounding. Months 5 and 6 are where the transformation becomes visible to other people. The team notice something in you that's different. Your partner notices something's different too. You start noticing that you are different. The version of yourself you could not imagine at the start is now identifiably present. Not fully formed yet, but there and unmistakable. That is not fantasy. That is the timeline, and it is available to any founder willing to commit. 6 months from now, you will either be here again, still carrying the same weight, still telling yourself the same stories about why you can't make the changes, still promising yourself that next week will be different. Or you will be a version of yourself you would not currently recognize. It really is that simple, and it really is that binary. The mechanism is the compound of small, consistent changes. The specifics are the 5 principles in this video. The Keystone morning, the subtraction of the most depleting thing, 2 hours of deep work a week, naming the voice that has been running you and finding the people who will reinforce the direction you're heading in rather than resist it. You don't have to do all 5 at once. Start with the Keystone, get that holding, then add the subtraction, then the deep work block, then the voice, then the community. One at a time if you need to, but start wherever you can. 6 months from now, you will thank the version of you that started today. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a like and a subscribe. It helps me, it helps the channel, and it helps people like us find the content that really matters. Please, if you have started to implement anything in this video, put down in the comments how you're getting on. I would love to hear how you're getting on with it all. And as always, I'd love to remind you that you matter too. Don't forget that.